Hello everybody, welcome to the Gilbert White 300 birthday online garden tour. I'm Keith Oakley, gardener at the Wakes here in Selborne. We're just standing outside the original part of Gilbert White's house. When he first came to live here, he was 8 years old. He came with his parents and his brothers and sisters to a house that his grandfather had bought for his grandfather's wife in case she was widowed. And when Gilbert White's grandfather died, he and his grandmother and his parents came to live here. This is the original part of the house. It's got a lot bigger during Gilbert White's lifetime and later on in the 19th and 20th century. But this section here, from this black drain pipe on the right up to the corner here, was the original house. And the garden was also just the area surrounding the original house here up to the high street. It was very small, but it increased hugely during Gilbert White's lifetime in the 18th century. Well everybody, we're now standing by the fruit wall, which is a south-facing wall on the side of the lawn. Gilbert White knew that you could use a south-facing wall to grow fruit trees, like we have here, an apricot and a nectarine, and it would store up some of the heat of the sun that it absorbed during the day. Now, there's a plaque here, which is a little bit hard to read, slightly obscured, which is GW 1761. We've got the exact date that this was put here. It was September the 1st, 1764, about 3 years after the fruit wall was built. And Gilbert White wrote, "Got a stonemason to fix the stone with my name and the date of the wall in the middle of the fruit wall. When the mason came to chisel a hole for the stone, he found the wall perfectly sound, dry and hard." We're now in the six quarters. Now, the six quarters represent some of the flower beds that Gilbert White had here at the Wakes in the 18th century. This part of the garden wasn't actually part of the original garden here, but we've laid it out with beds that show some of the plants that Gilbert White was familiar with in the 18th century. Now we're hoping that on July the 18th this year, the 300th anniversary of Gilbert White's birth, we're going to have nice sunny weather so that people can enjoy the garden. We have a quote here from Gilbert White's birthday in 1755, fairly soon after we started keeping gardening notes. He recorded that on his birthday, July the 18th, "An uncommon hot, dry summer to this time." Let's hope it's like that on July the 18th this year. We're now in the herb garden at the Wakes. You know that Gilbert White grew a huge range of plants, including many of the herbs which we have here in the herb garden. We also know that he was very keen on growing grapes, and we have one of our vines here. You can see some of the grapes developing on the vine. And we also have another birthday quote from Gilbert White from July the 18th, 1767. It's a very short one. He simply says, "Vines begin to blow." Now, something beginning to blow normally meant it began to come into flower. Perhaps these ones are a little bit more advanced were in 1767. But he took a great deal of care over his vines and recorded a lot of detail in his garden calendar on their care and how many grapes that they produced. Hello again, everyone. Now we're standing next to the original ha-ha in the garden here at the Wakes in Selborne. Gilbert White was trying to build what was called a landscape garden, which was very fashionable in the 18th century. And one of the best known features of the landscape garden was the ha-ha. Maybe it should be pronounced ha-ha because it's meant to be an expression of surprise as you come across it walking out along the lawn and then you suddenly come to a sudden drop. The idea was that you could have livestock out here where we're standing which couldn't get onto your lawn up there, but you had an uninterrupted view of your estate from the house back there. The ha-ha here was built in 1761. Here's the quote from January 1761 about the building of the ha-ha. It was, by the way, Long the mason is a person, the mason who built the ha-ha. January the 24th, 1761. Long the mason finished the dry wall of the ha-ha in the new garden, which is built of blue rags, that's a type of stone, so massy that it is supposed to contain double the quantity of stone usual in such walls. Several stones reach into the bank 20 inches. The wall was intended to be 4.5 feet high, but the labourers, in sinking the ditch on inclining ground, mistook the level, especially about the angle, so that at that part, to bring it to a level, it is 5 feet 8 inches high and 4 feet 6 inches at the end. An excellent fence against the mead, and so well fastened into the clay bank that it looks likely to stand a long while. Well, it's still here anyway. We can also see Gilbert White's original sundial in the middle of the ha-ha here, which is also put there in 1761. Hello everybody, again. This is the alcove, which is at the end of the ha-ha. If you know the garden, you'll recognise where we are at one end of the ha-ha. We know that Gilbert White was very interested in observing nature, and he may well have used his original alcove, this is a reproduction, just to sit here and look at what was going on out there in the meadow. We know that the alcove was here because it appears in some of the paintings done at the time by Grimm, who provided illustrations for the natural history of Selborne. And we've got a quote about the alcove as well, which tells us something about how Gilbert White was maintaining his garden. So this is from November the 11th, 1762. He wrote, "Shut up the alcove with straw doors for the winter and took in the urns." What I think he was doing was using his original alcove to store the earthenware urns that he had placed at 2 points in the garden and protected them from frost by putting straw in front of them. So that's the only reference that we have, apart from the paintings, to the alcove in the garden. Okay, we're in the kitchen garden now. We're just looking at this year's onion crop that some of our garden volunteers have been lifting. The onions that we've grown this year, these are all destined for the cafe kitchen. It's a really good crop of onions. They've all been laid out to dry. Now we know from his records that Gilbert White grew a huge amount of fruit and vegetables, some of which perhaps aren't quite as popular nowadays as they were then. He obviously liked gardening a great deal because he was gardening on his birthday in 1760, and he recorded on July the 18th, 1760, planted out endive, a large plot in the field garden. Endive, or some people pronounce it endive, is a leafy vegetable, not grown very often nowadays. It's what we call a heritage vegetable nowadays. And we have grown it in the garden. We haven't grown it this year, but it's you can still buy seed for it. Some people still quite like to grow it. But we aim to have the kitchen garden here as productive as possible so that we can supply the cafe with as many ingredients as we can. Okay, we're standing next to the hotbeds. where we grow melons and cucumbers as Gilbert White did. We've had a few crop failures this year. It hasn't been the easiest year for growing crops in the garden. Gilbert White was pretty obsessive about growing in hotbeds, which he did by using fresh horse manure to create heat to grow crops like melons and cucumbers, and he kept extensive records of what he grew and what his crops were like. Again, he was gardening on his birthday. This is July the 18th, 1765. Cut the first cicada melon, a very delicate one, and deeply cracked at the eye. It had not one drop of moisture in it. Dry, hot weather ever since the rain. We're up at the edge of the meadow next to Hercules. Now, Gilbert White was trying to create a landscape garden like much grander gardens of the middle of the 18th century. One of the features of a landscape garden was classical statues, and he had this, or a statue like this, put up in 1758, but like I said, it was very much done on a budget. You were meant to view the statue of Hercules over a series of 6 gates, which again we've reproduced in the garden here. But the quote from January 1758 gives you a clue about how he managed to save money putting his statue up. He said, "Set up about 20 yards into the hangar, in a line with the 6 gates, a figure of the Hesperian Hercules, painted on board, 8 feet high, on a pedestal of 4 feet and a half. It looks like a statue and shows well all over our outlet." Okay, we're standing out here in the meadow where we get a good view of the great oak, which was planted around the time of Gilbert White's 10th birthday in 1730. So quite an old oak tree, not as old as some. Oaks can last for several hundred years. We have another oak tree which was planted some years ago next to it, which one day might become a replacement if the great oak finally dies, but it's still going strong at the moment. From this view, there's a painting done by Grimm in the 18th century which shows the great oak, which by then was about 50 years old. Shows the original house in the background. You can just see it over there. Our outdoor cafe is slightly obscuring the view at the moment, but the original house is just over there beyond the harbour. Okay, we're out here in the middle of the meadow. I'm sitting in our reproduction of the revolving wine pipe seat that Gilbert White had here in the 18th century. It's on a mound in the middle of the meadow where Gilbert White could bring his friends and family to enjoy the views of the whole estate. The idea of creating views or vistas was part of the landscape garden movement, so that people could enjoy looking at a garden, but also looking out into the natural world beyond. The idea of appreciating nature in its wilder form was becoming much more popular in the 18th century. Hope that you've enjoyed the tour. The garden is now open, and you're very welcome to visit. You don't need to book, you can just turn up. We now have an entrance from the car park. You can walk around the whole garden and meadow. We also have our new cafe on the lawn, where you'd be very welcome to have a cup of tea and a